Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney with Positive Aging Community and the Beacon newspapers. Today we're diving into a conversation with another pioneer and thought leader shaping how we live life with purpose, no matter our age or ability. These discussions and hundreds of other valuable resources are available at proaging.com. So let's get started. Let in our live stream audience, and now it is my pleasure to introduce our featured guest today, who happens to be an Aging Life Care manager and member of the Aging Life Care Association, Rebecca Lippel. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us today. Talking about ageism is one of my favorite topics, so I'm really excited to hear what you're going to be sharing with us today and the discussion that'll follow that. But before we dive into that, let's get to know you a little bit better. And then I'd also like to have just a brief discussion, especially for those that might not be familiar with aging life care managers, on what is an aging life care manager.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's really great to be a part of this group. And I was just listening to some of the updates you were sharing. And as a gerontologist, I am really pleased to see that these resources exist because so much of the aging process tends to be so siloed. And having a central place with such a diverse offering, it's incredible. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me join you today.
I love it. Okay. And so tell us a little bit about how you got into the business of aging life care. And then, I always like to sort of go over the broad definition of what an aging life care manager and show how they can find one using the aginglifecare.org website.
That's great. So I've been a gerontologist for over 20 years now. I was one of very few who, as a teenager, said, I want to be a gerontologist. I want to work with older adults. And I never looked back. Very clear passion for me. I saw as a young adult the disparities that exist for the older adult population. And we just could be doing better. And I heard about those baby boomers, and I wasn't quite sure what that was going to do for our society, but I knew that we just were not ready. And sure enough, we're not. And here we are. So it's been a passion of mine to work with the older adult population to help educate people. I've worked in senior living. I've worked in social model day programs, lots of work with the dementia population. And the really consistent piece is the lack of knowledge, lack of education, becoming your parent's parent, and being thrust into a caregiver role. We're not prepared for it. And being able to provide that education, resources, support in whatever shape or form, especially in the aging life care space, is really quite tremendous. An aging life care professional is not, I find people don't know that term, but it's the term you don't know that you should know. And I think with every, 65th birthday, you should be told about the Aging Life Care Association. Because essentially what we do is support one-to-one the families, the individuals, whatever that looks like, providing that coordination of care for the health piece of it, but also more just the everyday components, knowing the right answers, knowing the people to connect with, the industry professionals. I find so often that regardless of the topic, whatever the specific area is, there's just this lack of knowledge. People feel I only have these options or I only have those options. And the reality is it's a lot broader and wider and more creative than what people really have a sense of. And being an aging life care professional with ALCA out there as a member organization is a tremendous resource to professionals and also to the older adult population and their families trying to navigate this whole process.
I love it. All right. And I dropped in the definition and the link to the Aging Life Care website for everybody. But before I turn it over to Rebecca and the ageism topic, what I love to always do is just go to the Aging Life Care website, aginglifecare.org, you'll notice that there's a orange button right up here. It says Find an Aging Life Care Manager. You can go down to this search engine. You could type in your zip code and hit find. And in most regions, you will find a list of aging life care professionals that you can talk to. And the cool thing is that the for most practices, the initial consultation is free of charge because they're trying to figure out if this is going to be a match. And talking to two or three, you generally can find one that might be a good match for you or your loved one, and move forward. So, okay. Now let's talk about a topic that I absolutely love for our discussions, and it's been way too long since we've talked about it, is ageism. And Rebecca, before you start sharing your slides, tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this topic and became a real thought leader in this space.
I think after seeing so many blatant, incorrect perceptions of the aging process, it just fired me up. And I felt like, you know what, we need to educate people about this, but also from a perspective that has a little bit of a lighthearted approach, albeit looking at things that we don't necessarily think about in our daily lives, and things that even when I deliver this presentation to professionals, every time they stop and say, I do that. I caught myself. I didn't realize I did that. I have to think about this. And that is progress. So the more we can do this, and I think that's so much the case, even, not just with ageism, but all sorts of other components of our lives that we limit ourselves. So being able to just pause, look at that, and think about how we can do better, it's a really empowering spot to be.
I love it. And you're right. I mean, I find that most of, unlike the other isms, sexism, racism, what have you, that a lot of times the ageism issues are just, I didn't realize that. I
Hmm.
didn't realize that those words were being
Right.
discriminatory or what have you. And so that's why I like having these conversations. So enough of that. I'm going to duck behind the curtain, let you share your screen, and then folks just if you have thoughts, just drop them into chat or Q&A, and we will make sure that we address them before the end of our discussion. So, all right, Rebecca, you got a good view of your screen now.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you again, Steve. I really appreciate you having me join you and spend some time on this topic that is sort of your 101, but it's so much more powerful than the entry level because it's personal and it will mean something different, I think, for everybody who's joining us today and who will listen in the future. Okay, we're going to start with the basics. Very often in my field and out of my field, I hear people sort of stutter over the word gerontology, gerontologist, geriatrician. So, gerontology, of course, is the study of the process of aging and all of the aspects. A gerontologist, and I myself am a gerontologist, we have an advanced degree in the study of the physical, psychological, and social aspects of aging. And your geriatrician is your MD. So that's your physician, excuse me, who has a specialty in geriatrics. Some of you might have sought out a geriatrician for yourself and find that not many are available. It is a very small medical field in that respect. You're going to see far more medical students who are specializing in cardiology and oncology. Geriatrics is still quite the minority. So some statistics for you all. So we've heard about the baby boomers. 73 million baby boomers. And by 2030, which is somehow only a few years away at this point, all boomers will be 65 and older. So that's that big, huge age wave that we knew was coming. And sometimes it's referred to as the silver tsunami because It's huge, and you're not prepared for that. And we really are not as a society and a culture. By 2040, we're going to have more than twice as many in the year 2000 Americans 65 plus. That is huge. And in just a very short period of time, that's a tremendous, tremendous growth. I love focusing on the number of older adults who are centenarians because this is not your grandmother's aging process any longer. We are living longer. We are living with more vitality. We are living with more vigor and interest, and it all looks so different. And so we're going to see, or we saw rather, such a growth of the number of centenarians compared to the early 80s. Your typical life expectancy in the United States overall in 2024 is about 79. We know that women tend to outlive men for a variety of reasons, at 84 plus and men at 65, 75, excuse me, plus. So that number is quite significant. That is a lot higher than it was in the past. I love this slide. Everybody on this call knows the Golden Girls, and if you don't, it's on syndication on about four different stations, so you can always catch it. So the Golden Girls, I like to use the slide because it's really surprising the ages that some of them were portraying versus their actual age. So this was about 1985. Everybody knows the premise of the Golden Girls, all of these women living together. And the kicker is Sophia on the left there portrayed a woman who was 80. She was 80 in the show, and she was the mother, different generation. But in real life, she was 62. That's quite profound. And then you see Dorothy versus the real life actress, B. Arthur, was actually 63, and she was portraying a much younger woman. The infamous Blanche was not far off from Rue's actual age of 51, and Rose was portraying a woman who was 55 in the show, and her real age was 63 in real life. So this is very interesting to see, and also at the time in the 80s, what this sort of image of aging looked like. We're going to talk about some perspectives on ageism and different places we see it. Language is one of the most common places. Think about how many times you yourself, or maybe somebody you know, and I've had professionals fall into this category as well, use language like, she's so cute, or, oh, they're adorable, that older couple. Or perhaps an aide might call the person baby, mommy, sweetie. These are not their names. Puppies and babies are cute and adorable. Older adults are dignified individuals who have lived their lives and do not need to be called these pet names. And this was one that I was recently presenting to an assisted living community, and professionals in the building there said to me afterward, that's me. They raised their hand. They said, I do that. I call people cute and adorable all the time. Do they mean with any malintent? No, of course not. But it does catch something in them to describe them with these words of cute, adorable. And then we have the language about how we're describing older adults. And this one, I remember when I was in college trying to think of what the right word was. And to this day, I still think about what the right word would be. And I think it depends on who you're talking to. It's the audience. It's how it's perceived, how it hits somebody's ears. And if they feel like they fall into the category of old, geriatric, elderly, seasoned. These are common words utilized. Geriatric is just one that shouldn't exist any longer. That seems to be pretty unanimous across the board. Also figuring out what age to start applying these words. That is a highly emotional debate when you speak to a particular generation. You can just say old, maybe older. Elderly has a connotation, has a very negative connotation of not able, not capable, frail, needing help. Seasoned is a fun one because, I've had people say, why seasoned? Why am I seasoned? Because I have salt and pepper hair, so I'm seasoned that way. So a little just to it, but it does beg the question, what is the right term? Is there a right term? We have young adult, youth, adolescence, middle age. What is our acceptable term for older adults? We tend to love when older adults speak with no filter. I'll give you an example. Um, we were at a family function. I was at a family function, and the great grandmother in the group, who's about 90, declared that the wine tasted disgusting. Everybody thought it was so funny. Now, if I said that, which I wouldn't say that, but I would have gotten looks of, oh, why would you say that? That's not very kind. But everybody thought it was funny that she said it. So there seems to be this veil lifted of allowing, oh, she's so cute. She said the funniest thing. And where do we see that also? We see that with young children. Kids say the darndest things, right? So now we're sort of applying that to older adults as well. Our older adult caregiving network. This is one that I realized in the last few years after becoming a mom. I have three young children, and I spend a whole lot of time at playgrounds. And I find when we sit at playgrounds, when I'm sitting with other moms, we're talking about the children and the struggles we have, or things that are coming up, or classes we're looking for the kids to enroll in. And there's this like natural community that is created where you're talking about, oh, what do you do about little Johnny biting? Oh, here's a resource. Oh, you're doing swim classes. This is where I did it. You should call them. So on and so forth. It's universal. You're going through the same pain points for the most part. Now, not all of us are parents, but all of us tend to have caregiving duties that we get thrust into as family members or very close friends. So, where is our natural, organic playground for sharing those resources for older adults and being caregivers? That natural network does not exist. And in fact, we're so much so not even discussing it that we're not even we don't have a place to do it. We're just not talking about it at all. And so when you get together, but it's universal, when you get together and you start to get that conversation going, it's completely universal. And the more you talk about it, the more people are keeping these conversations going. And it's surprising that that's not more of a natural space that allows for them. Of course, we've always heard double standards with genders, that older men look distinguished and older women look, well, old. And that is something we still see. I was just in CVS yesterday, and I picked a random aisle to walk down. I was going to the greeting card section, and I was in the aisle that must have been for face products, facial skin products. And I paused for a moment, and I literally said out loud, what used to be on these shelves before we cared so much about how many wrinkles we had? Because I was struck by how many face masks there were and how many face creams and oils and serums and all sorts of products. And I just thought, what was on these shelves years ago? Because it wasn't always this way. And then, of course, our stereotypes. So, what is a stereotype? We know that stereotypes are a set of cognitive generalizations. Those are our beliefs about the qualities and characteristics of members of certain group or social category. Ageism, however, refers to the stereotypes and how we think. It's the prejudice, how we feel, and then how we might subsequently discriminate, how we act toward others based on their age. So, where do we see these stereotypes? If you think about it in all of these places in your daily lives, I bet you would come up with some great examples. And I'm going to ask you to start thinking about that now. So you see it in TV shows and movies, in your media, commercials, advertisements. Nothing catches a good laugh quite like poking fun at an older adult or watching, the AI created older adults flipping in the air. Um, Kids products, which we'll talk about in a little while, programming, storybooks, sayings, we know a lot of those. Again, jokes, lots of products we see all over about old age. You see it in the workplace and also healthcare. So some stereotypes in aging in TV shows, movies, and commercials. So, as I mentioned, I have young children. I have three kids under 10. And so we are in the midst of lots of cartoons in my household. And this first one, Bluey, is a New Zealand-based cartoon which I typically really like, but I do not like this episode of Grouchy Granny. And they poke fun at the way that this granny drives her little rascal. And they poke fun at how she can't drive it very well. Nice parking job, and they put the blankets over their heads. I am somewhat dismayed at times when my youngest, I have twins who are 5, grab a blanket and put it over their head to emulate what they see here in this cartoon. So we're starting that early. We're putting that in cartoons for children. If anybody's ever seen The Bachelor, a few years back, they had The Golden Bachelor, where Bachelor Jerry was, I think, in his 60s. He wore hearing aids and he was looking for love. And so the women who were on the program with him were of similar age, all looking for love. Now, The Golden Bachelor didn't do so well in the ratings, not nearly as well as your typical Bachelor episodes. Again, the age there. Most of us know Grumpy Old Men, Calendar Girls, Driving Miss Daisy. Those are classics. Up here, you see the gentleman on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen as and your typical stereotypical view, right, of aging. You have your white hair, you have these massive glasses, the nose is oversized, and he has his pants to what my mother would refer to as your pippic. And so they're as high as they can possibly go. Golden Girls we talked about, and you can also Google the E-Trade commercial if this is getting old, and you'll see what I mean. This is one of my favorite slides, but it's one of my most upsetting slides. So I'll run through a couple of these real quick. Your stereotypes, so sayings. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. We know that one so often, and that's just simply not true. Your senior moment. Oh, don't mind me, I'm having a senior moment. Or we refer to women as little old lady. She's a cute little old lady nonetheless. On the bottom left portion of your screen there, you're going to see a screenshot that was taken actually from my phone. I don't know what group this was on, but it was some Facebook group, and there was some post about older adults, it must have been. And this person, this is an actual person, I did blur out her name, wrote the following: Older people are naturally insensitive, sad face. Now, I'm thinking that Fran, whatever her name is, had some pretty poor experiences and moments with older adults that created this narrative for her. But to have that perception and then also put it on such a public forum such as Facebook, it's a hard pill to swallow. Of course, on the bottom middle section there, you have your over-the-hill products. You can find those on Amazon, and sure, that comes with your headstone, your visor, your old people crossing, droopy drive, because everything sags, as we know, it's inevitable. Your pills, so your typical negative associated products. Now, the two on your right, the little boy and little girl, these are rough. You can find these on Amazon. These are costumes. These are costumes that are designed for the 100th day of school. When my older son started elementary school years ago, we were told that there is the 100th day of school celebration, and you can celebrate this in a number of ways. You can do some art that has 100 different items on it, which is the one, bless his heart, that he did choose to do. You can write a story about what the world will look like when you're 100, or you can go to Amazon, purchase these costumes, and dress like an old person and at 100 years of age. We're now selling products that are showcasing the stereotype, complete with your cane, your curly gray frazzled hair with rollers in it, of course, your glasses that have the lovely chain because you might lose your glasses because you are old after all. And then your standard pocket watch, your suspenders, your white mustache, and these are actual products, again, that you can purchase and get tomorrow from Amazon. So we can do a lot better. If we are creating these products, we can do a lot better. And then the last one there is a game called Greedy Granny. Now, I happen to have that game, not because I wanted to buy it. I told my family it was for educational purposes only. And unfortunately, my youngest, excuse me, I just lost my screen here. My youngest thought it was hilarious. So I hope you can see it here. And Steve, just pop on if you can, just to let me know. So this is Greedy Granny. I did get this at a secondhand store, so I didn't have to pay full price to this company. She is in her Barca lounger, relaxing nicely. Her eyes are closed. She has big blue glasses again. We have purple hair because that's what happens is when you get older, your hair turns purple. Your knee-high socks and your to the very top of the neck collar sweater. Looks totally normal, right? Everybody feels like they can identify. It's like looking into a mirror for many, I'm sure. So what you do with this game, she's sleeping, she's relaxing, but don't forget, she is greedy. So it comes with these little toys that are supposed to look like biscuits, and they remind me of the Danish cookies you get in the blue tin. And there's a whole lot of them. And so what happens is you put them on her tray, and eventually, because she's so greedy, when you fill her up too much, I wish I could see everybody's face right now. But what happens is she shoots forward, her eyes open, her arms go up in the air, which are incredibly bony, by the way. And this actually was missing a piece. Her dentures fly out. So, again, children's toy. We can do better. We have to do better. We're starting this from too much of an early age, and what chance do we stand if this is the game that we are putting in front of our children when the realities are so very different? Okay. Now, there is some benevolent ageism, and this term really fascinates me. And maybe some of you have heard it, or maybe you've wondered what the term might be for this kind of experience. So this is your patronizing form of prejudice, where older adults are stereotyped as warm, kind, but fundamentally they are just completely incapable, frail, or needy. And our actions are driven by wanting to help. We don't want to hurt it. We're trying to help. Well, I see an old person crossing the street. I'm absolutely going to run and help them. Your motive is very positive, right? You want to help a person. We don't know if they need help necessarily. Or elder speak, how the language that we're using. We have an eagerness to be overprotective. I see this very often in the aging life care space with family members who retain our services, who are looking to make decisions for their loved ones. And through, our initial consultation conversation and through the process in working with them, I often revisit with them, thank you for this information. How does your mother feel about working with an aging life care professional? How does your mother feel about moving to an assisted living community? Uh, what is her interest in this? And so we tend to make this assumption that we have to make the decisions. We sort of get to this point where there's a shift from their independence to no longer able to make those decisions, and here we are. We're coming in and making them, but it's for her best interest, or if anybody's ever toured some of these newer assisted livings, they're amazing. Creme de la creme, gorgeous, amazing food, all the amenities, and most of us who are younger tour and say, I want to live here. I would love to do this. And then we'll say, but mom, why are you miserable? It's beautiful here. And the food is great. And there's friends everywhere and you're never alone. Well, did they get a chance to participate in the decision-making process? Or was this something that was just decided for them? You will always get more buy-in from anybody, regardless of what you're doing, if you engage them in that decision-making process. We tend to also be very dismissive. We talk past them or above them. Going to the doctor. My aging life care managers, when they support somebody and bring them to the doctor's appointment, they always sort of sit a little bit behind them, excuse me, and really don't lead the conversation because we know the doctor wants to talk to the client, the patient. But sometimes, more times than we would like, the doctor speaks right over the patient and looks at us and asks us, how has she been feeling? Is he taking his medication? Is he sleeping well? Well, those are questions you should probably ask the patient first. And we're here if we need to fill in information and we're scribing notes to be able to provide back to the families. But there seems to be this, kind of ignoring. We just work around them at a family function. If any of you have been at a family function, maybe Thanksgiving or a cultural holiday, and there's like this idea that we have to have great grandma there, or great grandpa, or grandpa, or whoever it is, or an older uncle. How often are you truly engaging that individual? There's this thought of, well, he can't hear very well. I'm sure that's the problem. Or, yeah, I don't want him to get confused. Or he can't follow along in the conversation. Or he should be focused on eating and not choke by being engaged in our conversation. Think about that. And then, of course, infantilizing, turning again, baby, sweetie. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. She tells the cutest stories. Common myths. We hear a lot about these as well. These, I won't go through all of them, but you're certainly welcome to read through them. These are commonly held beliefs about the older adult population. Just to pinpoint a couple of them here, depression and loneliness is not necessarily a normal part of aging, and also neither is Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Those are not normal parts of aging. The older you get, the higher your risk for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, but it is not a natural part that you can expect that will consistently happen. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. Depression and loneliness, you might be a little bit more lonely as you get older because maybe your spouse has passed, the children have moved out, maybe they're on the other side of the country, maybe they're out of the country, maybe you're a solo ager and you've been solo your whole lives. So the presence of other people around you tends to decrease and the accessibility for that. But obviously, with this type of a group, you have a nice community here. We can always learn new things. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's just simply not the case. I had presented this to a group based in New York City for older adults, and a woman popped on at the end and she said, at the age of 70, I decided to become a model. Aren't I beautiful? And I was just so glad to see that. And I thought, good on you, coming to the table like that, knowing your value and saying, I don't have to be 20, 27 with, legs to the sky. This is what I look like, and I should be out there as well. Keep exercising. We tend to hear from people, well, I don't want to exercise because I might hurt myself. I did tell my mother that I would use her as an example, and I have her consent. I'll say to her, Mom, did you do your stretches? And she will say, oh, no, I don't want to hurt myself. So I always remind people that you have to use your body to keep it working for you. Now, these are true images of aging. We know all the folks on this page here, and whether they've made contributions to media, society, our humanitarians, amazing accomplishments. It's really impressive what their resume of experience and contributions has been to what we know. Dick Van Dyke, by the way, I think is about 95 and his wife is in her 50s. So stereotypes and aging, why? Why are we seeing this? Just some reasons here. Undereducated about the aging process, and I mentioned this at the very beginning of the call. Being undereducated is a nasty place to live because it perpetuates stereotypes. There are assumptions. There are confirmation biases. So having more conversations, being more educated, facing this head on, puts us in a very different position. We simply fear aging. We don't want to get old, and we all have our reasons for fearing aging. Personally, I fear aging because I want as much time with my kids as possible. They're my whole world. And the thought of me not being here for them at this point, this is a common um, felt, moment at this point in life. You want to be there for your kids. You don't want to miss out. Don't know what's next, or, is it going to hurt the aging process? We're getting closer to the dying process. Our society reveres youth. Again, that aisle in CVS, next time you're in CVS, find that aisle. You're going to look around and think, wow, there really are a lot of different types of masks. Why do we need all these masks? I remember my grandmother was visiting when I was a kid once, and she's a lot of the reason why I became a gerontologist. And I had put this strange mud mask on my face, and she looked at me and she said, what are you putting that garbage on your face for? Stay out of the sun and put some moisturizer on, you'll be fine. And I think that was the best advice I've ever gotten about good skincare and our own personal experiences as well. contributes to the stereotypes. So here's where I'd like to take a pause for a moment and check in with Steve. I'd love to hear if there are any comments in the chat or what your own experiences in stereotypes and aging are.
All right. Yeah. And this was great. Getting a lot of comments. Yeah, I was going to say Dick Van Dyke is over 100 years old.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was in the news recently. And let's see. I love Stacy's comment, how and what we feel about our own aging. Why do we have a hard time with aging and looking old? And when I talk about this topic, I often say, oftentimes the worst ageism is what we say in our heads when we look
Mm,
in the mirror. And that
right.
oftentimes has been passed along through generations. Like we heard our friends, our loved ones, our parents talk about their wrinkles, their gray hair, their physical changes. Um, let's see. Somebody asked, "Can we get access to the slides? Would you be willing to do like a PDF that we could share?"
Sure.
Okay, great. And yeah, somebody said this is crazy. When you were showing that little grandmother toy, that's mind blowing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the so um yeah, and you know, here's when you were talking about walking through the store, I'm glad you brought up the cosmetics counter because all the anti-aging products
Hmm.
and just reflecting on that word anti-aging is is a great way to talk about death. But but what blows my mind is in the Hallmark stores
Hmm.
is Maxine and
Mm,
the stereotypes
right.
of the retirement and any birthday over the 60, all the black humor. And then you go to the graduation cards, and it's no one would ever imagine sort of looking at that chapter of your life the way that we look at
Absolutely.
birthdays over a certain age, and it's acceptable. It's like
Hmm.
somebody can hand you an ageist birthday card and you will laugh at it. And
Yes.
I often tell people, imagine if you handed somebody of a different race or gender a racist or sexist card. They would not laugh at that.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it's how we paint this picture. And to your point about generation, I suspect and I sure hope that when my children are in their 80s, this will look very different because this is something that has been passed through generations. You know, it's been so pervasive in that way.
hmm let's see some of the comments. Okay. KJ, stereotypes, the knowledge and experience acquired in a lifetime is suddenly ignored by society. Very good. I like that statement.
Mhm.
Ernestine, sometimes ageism is reflecting through being ignored or left out of the conversation. Yeah. As you had said, in the doctor's office is
Right.
where people will talk over the older adult. Um, recently, Donna says, recently I had a coworker state, I will be retiring in a few years. I only turned 60 this year and have a passion for my position. Yeah, I mean, that again is from a life planning stage, folks. I mean, sometimes there are these, what we think are these institutional things we have to do. You have to stop working and just
Mhm.
relax. But if you like your job, it's not work and it engages you with the community in a purposeful
Mhm.
manner, which is not a bad thing. So, but that's all of our choices there.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. Um, Oh, this is a good one. Darlene says, I'm 67. I work full time as a social work service coordinator. Some people are shocked that I haven't retired. I don't, as they say, don't look 67. What is that supposed to look like? And that, I will tell you, is an ageist statement. If you say to somebody, you look good for their age.
Mm,
What is that saying about somebody that you think looks like they're 67 or 70 years old? Um, Catherine says, even the word retirement is a problem. I like to say I'm moving and changing. Yeah, and Catherine, my term is graduation. I say to people, "Oh, you're graduating from your full-time job." KJ says most people can't afford to live on retirement and have to keep working. Yes, there are,
mm,
as much as we all read the Wall Street Journal articles that say that there's a ton of affluent older adults, there's a ton of impoverished older adults, and even more
yes.
caught between the cracks older adults. And so if we can find fun jobs to do, like it might not be the job that you did for your whole career, but
Right.
maybe it's a shift to, you know, doing something that you love and making a few bucks so that you can get by with your savings and social security. Um, Elva says, I think a good commercial is Ryan Reynolds about Mint Mobile cell phones service for retirees. He learned that retirees are not retired. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Um, I haven't seen that one. I got to check that out. Maria says, I've experienced medical staff speaking louder and slower to me,
Mm-hmm.
even though I am not deaf and my brain is not slow. I had to ask the individual to please speak normal. This, yeah, and
Good
I
for
think
you, by the way, for telling
that,
them to
yeah,
stop.
that is great. And I mean, what we said at the beginning about like a lot of times this is by accident, okay? That they're intentionally not trying to be disparaging, but if and it could be a small percentage, if 10
Right.
people are in that office have hearing loss, all of a sudden this individual without some form of counseling or guidance thinks
Right.
that everybody has hearing loss. Now, in an audiologist office, I could see where that is
Yes.
appropriate. Okay.
Agreed.
Anyways,
Well, I will add to that when I mentioned I'd worked in assisted living for a long time, and it was always interesting because if I really wanted to know what was going on for my residents, I would ask the maintenance staff. And the reason why is because, again, with good intentions, the social work staff has a particular way of speaking, where maintenance went in there and just shot the breeze as is, just talked. Hey man, what's up? What's going on? What are you sitting there for? It was so much more casual, and they felt like they don't feel like they're being assessed.
hmm I love it. Let's see. Uh, Gene says, when I was young, I envisioned aging gracefully. Unfortunately, I recognize and feel the reality of aging and some changes in her health. I feel okay commiserating and making fun of it. I still want to be the best I can and I can live with it. And again, yeah, folks, the uh, we need a sense of humor with ourself and our
Mhm.
situation. I think one of the things that we want people to be aware of is how we communicate with other people. And this there's I guess there's probably some wrong here, but basically the point is talks like this just raise the awareness that um, that that people can be impacted by ageism. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Lena says, "What is polite but effective way to respond to somebody that blatantly says a blatant ageist thing to you, such as, I will have you contact this client because she is older and probably doesn't have computer skills. Or make sure that you contact clients in this neighborhood early in the day because they're in bed by 6 p.m. I'm 67, and these things were said to me without the least bit of irony and recognition that I was part of the demographic that they were referring to." And yeah, I mean, again, more than likely, the people that are saying this are not being intentionally
Right.
ageist, But when we are in a forum like this and you read that and you just realize that, this blanket statement that
Hmm.
all older adults cannot navigate computers, or that all older adults go to the early bird special, or wake up late, or go to bed early. All these things are, we need to communicate with people as individuals.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I, I started my career young and I worked for AARP's headquarters at age 22. I was a baby there, and up until a certain point, until I, started being blessed with the wrinkles, thank you, my children, I was young in the field, and I would often get comments on the other end, of the ageistic spectrum of being young. And what I would often do to answer, to touch on that person's question, I would just put a little humor in it. And, if somebody said something like, "Oh, you're a baby, you don't know," I would say something like, "You know what? Cut me in half, count my rings like a tree, and then we can talk about it that little later. But first we need to do this." Adding like a little humor to it kind of makes them laugh and think, okay, maybe they're not the age I thought, and maybe I should pause for a moment.
I love it. Okay, how about I do this one last one
Mhm.
from Judy, and then if you want to finish
Great.
your slide deck, and then we can continue this great discussion. Judy says, I find myself giving into the comments, even
Mhm.
contributing to them, because it's where we are in society. This is this reminds me to push back and stand taller and prouder. I agree. Now, I actually had one of my guests on this platform was Jan Golden, who's created Age Friendly Vibes, the first age uh, positive greeting card company.
Mm.
And what she said is that you don't need to be aggressive in educating people about
Right.
ageism. That one of the techniques that she loves is that at a birthday, when somebody receives sort of ageist, even mildly ageist card, that's a great time to start a conversation. What does navigating the chapters of your life mean to you? And oftentimes, when you go around the room, you find that there's nothing that resembles what's in that card. It's all, wow, I'm doing things now that I never expected to do. I have more confidence now. Yes, there could be some healthcare concerns that can come up, but honest to God, I mean, I'm 60 years old. Me and my friends have been talking about our injuries and healthcare concerns since I was in my 20s. It's just different types of
That's right.
healthcare concerns. So, okay, let we'll come back to the open discussion, but let you get through the rest of the slide deck, and we'll see you on the other end.
Sounds good. And we only have a couple more, so I'm glad that this has sparked a lot of conversation because that's where we make progress. I like this slide very much because the images of aging certainly are changing. Blanche, here she is again, portraying a woman 50 years old in 1985. And over there to Blanche's left or right, from your perspective, is Jennifer Lopez, also known as J-Lo. At the time in 2020, she was 50 years old, barely dressed, on a pole at the Super Bowl. So we have come a very long way of what 50 looks like. So this is a great actual image of true aging at this point. The comparison of what it was, the idea of what it was, and now what it really is. I mean, JLo's arms are so toned. I can't get that toned. There's some data sources, and I thank you all for having me, and I look forward to, I see we have a bunch more comments that have popped up in the chat.
And okay, so here is folks. Uh, we had somebody that says, as a very fit older person, is there a polite way to respond to overly helpful people, assuming I need help because I'm old? And to this person, because I saw this while you were talking, I go, you know what? I'm going to drop this into AI and
Hmm.
see what our friendly AI intern says. And so here's one approach. That's so kind. I've got it. Yeah, I don't like this one. There's a word that I don't like, and that's still. I'm still mobile. So what AI says, that's so kind, I've got it. I'm still pretty mobile, said with a smile. It signals you're aware of the assumption, gently correcting them. Still, the word still in our language can
Hmm.
be very ageist. And what I mean by that is that we say, my dad is 75 and he still goes
Hmm.
swimming every day.
Hmm.
All you need to do is say, my dad loves swimming.
Sure.
Okay, that's it. All right. Um, let's see. How about this one? I appreciate that, but I'm good. Thanks for looking out, though. And I've hit, that's anybody could say that, and
Right.
that's good. And
But
then,
all of these, though, Steve, all of these, I could see somebody turning around and saying, "Oh, well, look, he's being obstinate. He won't accept the help." That's like a typical older adult, right? And
again,
I might even say, because I like to, flip things a little bit on people, obviously, and put a little humor. I might say, "No, no, no, let me help you." And they sort of stop and say, What? Okay, okay." Like showing I don't need the help. Let me help, but you look like you're struggling. Let me help you a little bit. And that sort of flips it a little bit.
yeah. So, but I'm curious, for those in the audience, if they have some ideas on when you get a response like that. Let's see. Okay. Then, whoops. Okay. Stacy says, do you think that family members can be ageist towards their older loved ones? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think most fraud against older adults is being committed by family members. Probably most ageist statements are being committed by family members to their older loved ones. And because let me tell you, I mean, the way that we oftentimes communicate in families is not the way that we would communicate with our coworkers. Like we say things to family members that we
Mhm.
wouldn't say in the general public. And so that's something for us all to be very aware of. Talking about Aunt Ethel and even just that stereotype, just using the word the name Ethel, I think is a ageist bias. It's sort of like talking about my aunt. I mean, we don't need to always reference the Edith, the Ethels, and the generationally older names.
Which, by the way, have come back. Lots of little
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
now named Sadie and Gracie and Edith. I've seen it.
yeah. No, no, that's great. Okay. Let's see, where are we at here? Boy, lots of things here. Okay. Uh, I obtained my degree in computer science in the 60s. I'll be 80 next month, and I love people's look on their face when they realize that at my age, I'm more computer savvy than they are. The let's see. Kathleen, can anyone suggest an educational response for you don't look your age? Um, uh, Rebecca, any
I, yes, I would look at them and say, well, neither do you.
I love that. Okay. And oh, let's see. We didn't dive into your people love tuning into these just to meet aging life care managers. And what geographic region do you serve, Rebecca? And their question is
Mhm.
they were wondering if you serve the uh, San Jose, Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo in California.
I am based in New York and support New York City, surrounding boroughs, Westchester County, all of Long Island, Bergen County, New Jersey, and Lower Fairfield County. However, I do have sister colleagues in other live well locations around the country. If you'd like to take a snapshot of my information, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect you. I know we have some support in the Bay Area. I don't know how far that is. I think it's sort of close, but I also know that California is enormous. But in any event, please reach out to me. Let me know you were on this call, and I'd be happy to make a warm handoff to somebody who's in the local area utilizing that wonderful tool that the Aging Life Care Association has on their website if I don't actually know the person personally.
Great. And I'm gonna cut and paste your email address into
Excellent.
chat as
Thank you.
well. And okay. Um, oh, Elva says Dr. Bill Thomas, I'm a huge
Hmm.
fan of his as well,
Same.
educated me about quitting using the word still this or still that. He's terrific. I agree. And I think he's the one that opened my eyes to that as well. Um, Lisa says, I also hate when my son-in-law refers to me as Gammy. I'm not his Gammy. And again, this is like a probably his grandmother loved being called Gammy,
Mm.
and now he's assigning that to anybody who is over a certain age, and he's probably not doing it on purpose.
Right.
Well, he doesn't know that that's intentionally
Right.
hurting, impacting people. Okay.
Terms of endearment can be ageistic in that way.
Yeah. Tony says doctors are also egregious when they consider your age and you
Hmm.
should have surgery or in when you should have surgery or a new treatment. And I've heard a lot of folks say that the way that doctors and healthcare professionals sometimes treat them
Yes.
can use a little bit of they could benefit from this seminar here. Flora says, when there are teachable moments, we have to opportunity to educate. Yeah, and again, that's going to be at each of our own style. But it never occurred to me, Rebecca, until you sort of pointed it out about how if somebody thinks that all people over a certain age are ornery and
Hmm.
and cranky or what have you, and then you're trying to communicate that you're communicating me in an ageist manner, how that can be implied. It's like, oh, he's just a cranky old man,
Right.
and so. Um, uh, let's see. Lisa says I'm not a person. I am a mom, mother-in-law, grandma. Um,
Hmm.
so let's see. Karen says I'm feeling so empowered by reading all the comments in chat. That's good. Um, and let's see. I think I got through it, and we're over an hour. Margot says this has been a breath of fresh air. Great and depressing presentation. We should all age out loud. And Margot, I agree. I mean, I think this is a great presentation when we can connect with a group of people that are so open-minded, with Rebecca leading us to through some a thought-provoking conversation. But it's depressing when we think about how far we have to go to minimize ageism. And we haven't even talked about what mostly is in the headlines about
Right.
ageism, and that's the discrimination in the workforce, and the
Right.
way that people over a certain age are communicated and managed in a workforce is something that we need to get out of the headlines.
That's
So,
right.
Rebecca, this has been wonderful, folks. I will get this recording up. It'll have Rebecca's contact information. It'll have the Aging Life Care Association's contact information. And I agree. This has been a breath of fresh air. I should not go this long without having an ageism conversation. There's this is some of my favorite dialogue.
Thank you
All
so much
right.
for having me. I really appreciate it and for everybody participating. It's great. This is where it
You
starts.
you bet, Rebecca. Okay, we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, everybody.